Hello, and welcome to this month's installment of Ask Derek, where I answer your mail. This month I heard from Maurice in Port Orchard with a question about how Congress decides what bills to vote on. That question reminds me of when I first came to Congress. After you get elected and before you're sworn in, you have to attend orientation. It's a lot like the orientation weekend that college kids go through every year. But instead of learning where things are and how to register for classes and pick a major, you learn how to pick a committee assignment and how a bill becomes a law. Anyhow, as part of this process, I spent a few hours one day listening to a couple of experts from the Congressional Research Service talk about the budget process and legislative procedure. It was really riveting. Anyhow, they discussed how individual committees produce legislation which is then brought to the floor and considered by the House. Then it's the Senate's turn. And if they pass the bill, there's a couple different ways to reconcile the differences and send a single bill to the president for him to sign or veto. Anyway, at the end of the session, the experts in legislative procedure said, that's the way it's supposed to work, but it hasn't worked like that in years. Instead, what we've seen is that leadership of whichever party's in power decides which bills to bring up, and the Rules Committee makes sure that there's very little opportunity to have amendments or have any real debate. Anyhow, that's why some of the few bills that pass each year are what's known as appropriations bills, bills that fund the government agencies and programs that folks rely on. Every September, Congress needs to pass the package of bills that fund your government. This process gets started in the House Appropriations Committee. I'll tell you, as a member of that committee, I'm working with my colleagues on making sure that we can put together responsible bills that help address key issues facing our region and the whole nation. Hopefully the House and Senate can come together to iron out the differences between the two proposals before our September deadline. It's a lot of work to do in a short period of time, but I'm going to keep at it. A lot of folks also wrote in this last month to ask about my views on the budget that recently passed out of the House. Let me start off by just saying a budget is a reflection of our values. Budgets aren't simply numbers on a spreadsheet. A budget shows what we care about and the nation that we aspire to be. Unfortunately, the budget that passed the House did not live up to our values and it did not earn my vote. I couldn't support this proposal because it maintained deep across-the-board spending cuts known as sequestration. We've seen the impact of sequestration in our neck of the woods, and I'm dead set against that ham-fisted approach to spending decisions. But there's more. The budget would end the Medicare guarantee, meaning our parents and grandparents wouldn't have the certainty in receiving the medical insurance that they've spent a lifetime paying into. That budget makes deep cuts to infrastructure and education and national research investments that are critical to our national competitiveness. Here's one quick example. The budget freezes Pell Grants for the next 10 years, putting college further out of reach, just when employers need more qualified workers and families are struggling to make sure their kids can go to college. If that wasn't bad enough, the proposal also assumes $1.1 trillion in unnamed, unspecified cuts. Gimmicks like that won't help middle-class families who are feeling squeezed right now. Congress needs to get back in the habit of passing real budgets, responsible budgets. In fact, I've co-sponsored a bill that says if Congress doesn't get its act together and pass a budget, members of Congress shouldn't get paid. But our budget should live up to some basic principles. It should help us get our nation's long-term fiscal house in order, tackling our deficit in a comprehensive way. It should be based on real decisions, not accounting tricks and gimmicks and unspecified cuts. It should ditch the harmful across-the-board spending cuts called sequestration. It should focus on smart investments in infrastructure and our education system and our national security. For those still feeling squeezed, it should show the road to prosperity by rewarding hard work, providing education opportunities, and promoting American ingenuity. Going forward, Americans deserve a budget that reflects our nation's values, one that enables folks to get back to work, strengthens the middle class, and reduces the deficit. That's what I'm going to be fighting for. Thanks for joining me this month, and please keep your questions coming.